Now, yeah, guys, get it on. Welcome back to Fast You Fall, but you buy if it left to win by Max at Capital Cycles. Hey, let me tell you about the weekend double header, which was a pretty hard road race in the Wairarapa, the PNP Summer Series Race 1, which involved some hammer and some tong. And let me also tell you about the Wellington Masters Cycling Club 40 kilometre time trial champs. If you're looking at the picture, that's actually last week at the Masters Games, but the setup for my bike was much the same. On that picture I've got a Zip 404 on the front because the wind was pretty gusty, but yesterday, because of the excellent conditions, I was able to run a Zip 808, a deeper front wheel, with no problems at all, and it was an excellent day to collect aerodynamics data. So I'll tell you what my drag was, my power and everything, and let me show you some fascinating stuff to come out. Let me show you in the real world on a perfect time trial day, when you compare guys who are pretty much the same size with exactly the same power, what the advantage of aerodynamics is, and a very clear real world example. I think it's pretty cool. I'll show you the cool lines in Strava. So let's have a look here at let's review these couple of races. So PNP Summer Series is a series of 5 races between now and April, all around the Wellington region. A mass start format with 2 kind of grades. A longer version, the Grand Fondo, courses between about 80 and 120 k's. Shorter version, Medio Fondo, courses between about 60 and 80 k's, something like that. And mass start. So there's only two starts, if you like. Pretty well organised by the PNP club. I can make them go. This first race was the least hilly, the least demanding of the courses probably, but almost by virtue of that kind of harder, because everyone goes pretty hard to get some points on the table, and there's a lot of flat power bursts. I'll show you what happened. I did learn a couple of things along the way. Alright, so total time, the distance was 82.3 k's. We did it in 1:57.56, so an average speed of just a hair under 42 k an hour, pretty fast. Climbing of 341 meters, most of which is just down the southern end of the course, and half of that is all on just one climb. Work of 2,020 kilojoules, so in the space of under 2 hours, consuming about holy moly, maybe like 8 McDonald's hamburgers. It's pretty grunty. Alright, so average power of 285 watts for a normalized power of 329 watts. Big difference, a lot of strong power bursts. Average cadence of 95 RPM. So the way it worked out was very quickly. There was an interesting thing happen, which is in the first third of the race, there was some gravel sections which actually turned out to have some very deep gravel in, and that split things up quite a bit. There was a lot of punctures and a few, maybe not really crashes, but guys getting a bit swervy, about 6 punctures, and that tends to sort of make gaps appear as well, because you can imagine if you're behind someone, they get a puncture, they swerve a bit, opens a gap. I was away with a group of maybe, from memory, 10 guys or something, 20 guys, and always have a thought, maybe from my mountain bike background, which is when you come into a gravel section like that, go to the front and push the pace pretty hard to make sure you're out of any trouble, and to pressure riders behind you, force brakes, force gaps open. That's what I did. I forced it pretty hard into the gravel there, and pretty much that happened. A gap, a few crashes, few flat tyres, and unfortunately a few of my FitLab teammates getting punctures, which is a shame for me later on. That meant we had a break of perhaps about 10 to 12 riders. Over the course of the next half of the race, some of those riders were lost. You can see down with a tailwind up the eastern side of the lake here. Look at this period here of about 15 minutes with an EP of 368 watts. Just a lot of very hard attacking, some in the gutter, and a period where I had to get on. I got slightly gapped by about 20 metres with a couple of other riders working to stay on. They couldn't quite close the gap, and I had to hit it across. Smartly, the guys in the main break recognised that I was a little bit on my own, and they put the hammer down. So if you look at this section here, 41 seconds, an EP of 526 watts. So a pretty strong effort to get back on, yo-yoed a bit, and I think it was worthwhile doing that. It was sort of like, maybe there's a good example of the Steve 10-second rule. 10 seconds longer got me back on the train. Then we had a selection of 7, and about 4 of those 7 riders being from the Mayo GP team. Me, Brent Backhouse, Dave Rowlands, Matt Webb-Smith, Dan Wilashevsky. I can't remember everyone. Anthony Norder. Kind of a list of bad times for me. I made some semi-attempts at rolling off the front, but Mayo had me completely covered. No problem at all. And with a little bit of 1-2 action, managed to get Anthony Norder off the front with about 2 kilometres to go with Matt Webb-Smith. Matt Webb-Smith is taking the win, followed by Anthony Norder. And I think Dave Rowlands, may have come in for a solid third. Me rolling out what is known as the absolute non-sprint. Me and Kelvin Standrel bringing up the rear. Me dead last out of the 7. And this is what I was capable of, 21 seconds at 702 watts, I think it says there, which is not a wildly impressive sprint. Guys producing probably double that. So there you go. That's why I'm a time trialist and not a sprinter team. So congratulations to those guys in the Medio Fondo. I can't remember who won, but shout out to my rider Erwin Kurbis, coming in 6th with a bunch sprint. First ever road race, and he's a mountain biker. It's pretty impressive for a guy's first road race. And lots of my other riders, so Chris Sutherland and Steve Wallace, unfortunately having a mechanical, but he's one to watch out for later on. John Grimwood, I think, mechanical or puncture or something. Steve O'Keefe did great to win his age grade in the Grand Photo. Lots of FitLab brothers doing well. So I was tired after that race. Let's look at the next day, which is the 40 kilometre club, time trial champs, Masters Cycling Club. And here's a couple of, maybe this is where the more interesting analysis comes in. You can see I've figured out with pretty good accuracy my drag coefficient. This is an excellent day for it because the wind conditions were negligible, especially for me because I started first, which was good because the wind hadn't come up at all. So I calculated my drag on this course at 0.225, which for a 77 kilo dude of 1.86 meters is pretty good. If I'm looking at my riders, anyone that can start to nudge under about 0.25, 0.24 at that size is pretty good. So 0.225, I'm really happy with that. I can maybe go even a little lower with some more specialized tweaks. So let's look at first the most important thing, which is, well, we'll look at stats if you like. I did moving time about 55.47, my third best time on this course. There's not a lot of climbing on this course. One little climb, 994 kilojoules, about 3 McDonald's hamburgers consumed in under an hour. Average speed of 42.9 kilometers an hour. So look at this. Here's a couple of interesting stats which show you the effect of having a road race the day before. Your TT, average power 397 watts, normalized, 297, normalized 299, very similar because it's a time trial. That's 30 to 40 watts lower than my ideal target and what I would be capable of on a very fresh day. So that's the difference. If you actually look at the data, I mean, everything about it was sort of fine, a fairly good start in that. And if I run along here for the first turn, first 12 minutes or so, power down a little, 310 watts, so about 20 watts down on what I was really targeting. But heart rate's still sort of up there, and heart rate sort of stays up until maybe about 20 minutes in. It stays just under that 160 beats. 160 beats is usually about where my maximum sustainable power is at in a time trial. And then things go very pear-shaped, and over the period of the next 10 to 20 minutes, heart rate plummets another 10 beats or so, 143 beats. I don't know all the physiological reasons for all of this. All I'm saying is that mirrors a fall in the power. This mid section of the TT there, hovering about an average of 285 watts. So, yeah, significantly 50 watts under target power because it's tired from the previous day. Picked it up a little towards the end, and the speed overall was, as I say, pretty good because of the conditions. But here's the thing. So let's have a look. Oh, I think there's no results out yet, by the way, but I think I probably managed to win despite that. It's all about aerodynamics. So let's have a look at, I thought this is a really good opportunity to compare data for a few riders in the club who are very similar in terms of size, very similar in terms of output. And by the way, I did have a quick stalk through their data. All experienced time trialists with very flat pacing. So let's do a little comparison on these riders and see. I've set it all up here, see the effect of aerodynamics. So see here in the Strava comparison tool, I've set it up. This is comparing the data for yesterday's time trial. Oh, I just have a little drink here, it's quite hot. Between me, Jack Polly, who I suspect was second, Mike Proudfoot, who I suspect was probably third, and Peter Moore, who's uploaded as well and was probably fourth. And the time differential by the end, so if I ripped out around about 55.5 minutes, Jack and Mike are just under 2 minutes slower, and Pete 3.5 minutes slower. So here's the really interesting thing. All of these riders probably between 75 to 85 kilos. And if we scroll down here, all these riders have power data available. And interestingly, all of them very close. So me, I had the lowest power output of all these four riders at an average of 297 watts. Jack had the highest at 313. Mike had was bang on with Pete at 300 watts. So a spread of about what is it, about 16 watts between us. Pretty good. So really the difference is, let's just take out that 16 watts for a minute. This is a good chance to see at a flat pacing on a good day, very similar power levels, very similar size riders, the position. Oh, and by the way, I should mention this, setups in terms of disc wheels, deep front wheels, skin suits, all of the major, aero helmets of course. Now I realise they're not all the same, but those are relatively marginal. The big thing, bigger than any of those, or any of those combined, is position. How the air flows around the big meat puppet sitting on top of the bicycle. So you can see, if you have a look at, well, let's just look at the raw data. I've already sort of mentioned it. All things being roughly equal, how the heck I ripped out a minute and a half or close to 2 minutes, whatever it was, on Jack and Mike, who both had almost identical times, and Pete another minute back, say. So how the heck is it? I think we can, within a fairly good margin, say that the key variable here is position. We talked about bike, we talked about equipment, we talked about conditions, we talked about rider size. That really leaves the next only other measurable component to be position. And so I'll tell you what I've sort of seen and I've noticed, and what I've also done with my riders to pretty good effect is it's a lot around the front end of the bike. And I know a lot of you guys kind of know this already, but it sort of astounds me how no one does it. If you look at that photo I had up earlier, if you are looking at the screen, I should say I did change my position between that photo and yesterday. I brought my elbow spaces up another 20 millimeters. My torso, everything remains much the same, and by making the angle between my elbow and my torso a little less acute, I can effectively keep the same relationship between head, torso, everything, while just bringing my arms up in front of me a little more. So all I'm saying is so I know that's a wildly confusing way of pointing out something fairly obvious, which is get your hands and your arms up in front of your face more. So it's not quite as simple as this, but if you take everything, I would love to see some photos, by the way. Although I do know, the big difference I notice is hand and arm position. Jack Polly does have a very good hand and arm position, and given his power, I'm not entirely sure why his time wasn't better, because it looks to me like his position is as good, if not even better than mine. But that's not the way the wind sees it. It might be something where, because aerodynamics is just like any other fluid dynamic, you might want to actually go and do some laps at a velodrome, do some real world testing, do some nice testing using the Golden Cheetah Aerolab chung analysis tool. And here's what I'm saying is, all that sounds kind of wildly boring, but that's the real world for you. Everything being equal, get the aerodynamics better. Even on a disastrous day for power for me, it was still a good time because the aero worked out. So that's what I'm saying. Pretty pleased with that in that sense. I noticed that when I looked at Mike's bars, so he's got them sort of like in the older school traditional TT low hands position, and I think the evidence is pretty good now that you need to change that as much as possible. If you do, you need to be aware of the UCI regulations that come into play when you do bigger races like Centre or National Champs. 10 centimeters being the maximum vertical between elbow pad and tip of your extensions. And here's the big advantage of electronic shifting. That 10 centimeters includes anything that's on the end of your extension, namely the shifter, if you're using mechanical shifting. And those mechanical shifters are pretty long. I mean, they're about 5 or 6 centimeters long. That's 5 or 6 centimeters extra height and extra length you get, which can change your position in your aerodynamics pretty dramatically, just because you have a button on the end instead of a big shift lever. So I've changed to ETAP for that reason, and I think, well, that's a pretty good endorsement right there in those results. So have a think about that. I upgraded my TT bike to the Aero version of SRAM ETAP. I'm very happy with the function. It is unfortunately not a cheap exercise, and you're not going to be left with any change, even for a single derailleur like I run, a single ring, even for just rear derailleur only. Very little change from about close to $2,500. So it's pretty eye-watering, but there's it's kind of like a lot of things in TT, you can actually buy some speed, and you can buy you speed, as gross as that sounds. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I like to buy my extensions. If you want to mess around with this whole notion, and you can't get the position you need by just rotating your bar in the stem, I like to buy USE extensions. I don't know if you're supposed to say use or USE. From it's like from some track cycling specific shop, I think, in the UK, something like that. I don't know if Capital Cycles would sell them or not, I have no idea, but you can get a carbon version, an alloy version. They're pretty good value, with a really good, they're all pretty much the same shape, just a traditional ski bar, but they have variable bends. You get 20 degree, 30 degree, 40 degree, 50 degree. I think I'm running the 50 degree to give myself a lot of adjustability. So look at that, guys. I think that's really important, especially with Centre Champs and Nationals coming up. Get to the edge of the limits of the rules as much as you can. It'll really help. So thanks for running good events and all the helpers. One of my riders, John Karen, marshalling and organising the Masters Cycling Club race. Thank you to PNP for a good race on Saturday. It's going to be a good series. Next race is, I think, guys, if you're looking at the Masters Club calendar in Wellington, be aware there's been a couple of little calendar tweaks. And I think instead, correct me if I'm wrong here, instead of there being an interclub race this weekend, I think there's some ongoing disastrous relationship between the clubs, which keeps making interclubs looking more and more like a thing of the past. So anyway, I think what's happened with this is changed it around. So there's a small time trial at Gorrie Road, 21.5k TT upper heart, probably good for just tweaking your TT skills. A pretty low key event, so I might have some more analysis to come out of that as far as TT goes. Come see me if you want, and if you want me to have a look at your setup, I'm by no means any kind of position setup expert, but I kind of know a couple of things about what works and what doesn't in terms of aerodynamics, but also power on the TT bike. And you got to have the best combination. Don't go into this assuming that you just need to get lower and lower, and that's somehow going to win, because there's the one, it may actually not be any more aerodynamic, and number two, you might lose all your power. And it's quite a, with TT, it's quite a good drop off in power at a certain point. It's not really linear. The more closed your hip angle gets, you get to this sort of point and your power shuts off. So you're welcome to come see me. Come and see me and grab some WMCC samples, some tailwind samples, some cramp fix samples, and look on the bottom of this video for discount codes for all of the above. Alright, so I hope that helps. You know I love time trialing. I get excited about it. I did sit down a while ago when I decided that mountain bike racing was probably not going to be my forte physiologically. I sat down and thought about the things I really enjoy about cycling, and in my little mental spreadsheet, time trialing, the analysis piece, the data piece, the equipment piece, it all came out on top. It's exciting. I'll shout out to Joe Neeson as well, an early stage. She's come over to the dark side, one of my excellent riders, doing great TT last week. Winning her grade, I think, at the Masters Games. And I didn't see her after the race yesterday. She hasn't uploaded yet. So I'm going to see exactly how she did. I expect she'll do well, because proving once again, aerodynamics trumps huge amounts of power. You can be a small person, still do great in TT if you concentrate on getting the aerodynamics right. Alright, so as always, it's brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, WMCC, Capital Cycles. If you'd like a training plan from me or testing, email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or go to our website, fitlab.co.nz. I'll see you on the weekend.